Hey everybody, welcome back. Today I'm going to talk about missed workouts. So life circumstances will happen in such a fashion that you're going to miss sessions, whether it's from oversleeping or life gets in the way, work requirements, family emergency, whatever it might be. And we need to talk about which sessions you really need to make up and which ones you can afford to shorten or just skip if you happen to miss them. So if you're training for an Ironman, half Ironman, marathon, half marathon, or any high level Olympic distance racing, you really need to make up your key workouts. And in those contexts, key workouts would be your longest ride, for example, or your longest run in the buildup of the training, or one of your hardest tempo runs, or one of your most challenging interval sessions. So, if you need to rearrange your life to make that session up, you should do it at almost all costs, not all costs, but almost all costs. Maybe take a day off of work or a half day off work, rejuggle your schedule so that you can get that session in. One of the examples I like to give for something like this is if you're training for your first Ironman and you did a progression of your long rides of something like you did a 75 miler and then you did a 85 or 90 miler and then you've got a 100 miler coming up. If you really want to be in good enough shape for this Ironman race, you don't want to skip either of those last two. So you need to get those two rides in, however it works. Sometimes you push it back a week. Sometimes you only push it back a couple of days. It really depends on your flexibility and what else is going on in your life, but you really should get those sessions in. Another good example is something like if you're training for a half marathon or an Olympic distance event, and your session calls for 5 or 6 1-mile repeats running at race pace. That's an important session, and it may be worth it to you to skip the next day's workout and do that session. You may have to juggle around the following 2 days because one of the rules that we try to follow is we don't have a long run the day after a hard run because that leads to injury. So there are ways to fit these sessions in if you happen to miss one. The ones that are going to be less important, but you should still try to get in if you need to shift things around, are going to be things like your weekly interval run or your weekly longer ride or your weekly harder swim. So a good example here would be Monday mornings. Personally, my swim workout is a 5:15 start. I often don't get there on time, but I generally do get there. There are weeks where I'm too tired from the weekend and I just sleep through my alarm, or I wake up and I'm like, all right, I'm not going. And then I do the best I can to make up that session. For me personally, what that often is either a shorter swim at lunchtime or I'm able to get to the pool on a Tuesday morning because my Tuesday is fairly open as far as things go. For you, I don't know what your schedule's like. I don't know what the next day has, but these are some of the things that you need to consider. Other workouts that you don't generally want to skip are going to be your strength sessions. It's really, really easy for endurance athletes to drop strength out of their training program. And the older you are, or the more propensity you have towards injuries, the more important these workouts are. So if you're just busy, life gets in the way, you plan to do it at night, but all you want to do is sit around and drink red wine or chai tea, you need to figure out how to get that session in. With strength and yoga and things like that, they don't have to be exhaustive. They don't have to be an hour at the gym. You can do 20 minutes at home of bodyweight strength and call it a strength session. So there are substitutes that you can put in there that are going to be very helpful. Now, the ones that we can afford to skip in general, now you don't want to make a habit of this, right? Because bad habits lead to further bad habits. But if it's just an easy short run, and you're tired, busy, etc., it's okay to miss those occasionally. If it's just an easy short ride, it's okay to miss those occasionally. Within the context of your total training, however, you need to remember that every time you miss a session, it reduces your overall training load, it reduces your daily stress load, and ultimately is going to affect your total shape and performance. So by and large, as a coach, I would tell you not to skip any sessions. However, I realize that things happen and life comes up and you need to adjust and adapt. Where you don't want to miss sessions for you low volume athletes, let's say you really only exercise 4 times a week. Maybe it's a 30-minute run on Tuesday, a 45-minute bike on Wednesday, a day off on Thursday, a swim on Friday, some sort of schedule like that. If you only have 4 sessions a week, you don't want to miss any of them. If we get into a habit where we're dropping from 4 to 3 or from 4 to 2 workouts or from 5 to 3 workouts, if you look at it from a percentage standpoint, you're dropping your volume of training by 25 to 50%, and that's a tremendous amount overall training. So you need to figure out what is going to keep you motivated, whether it's groups of friends or having a coach like myself to remind you to get out there and train, just some accountability to make sure you get out the door. Now, there's flexibility throughout everything. The higher your volume of training, the more of an excuse you can have to miss something or to shorten something. If you're training 20 hours a week and you miss a 45-minute easy bike ride, in the grand scheme of things, it's not a big deal. But remember the total training load that we're looking at over time. Habitually, don't skip workouts. We don't want to get into a habit of, well, I missed Tuesday and I got busy on Wednesday and now it's Thursday night and I still haven't done anything all week. I'm just going to start again on Monday. You need to start again immediately. It's easy to push things out into the future and to keep telling yourself that I'm going to do it the next day or I'm going to make it up tomorrow. One of the things I like to do with some of my free time is watch videos about retirement. And a lot of the retirement guys will tell you that they speak to these retirees and the retirees were always saying, oh, when I retire, I'm going to exercise more. I'm going to go hiking more. I'm going to ride my bike more. But then they get to retirement and they're older and their bodies aren't working that great anymore because they didn't exercise the whole time they were working. And so then they can't do these things that they planned because they kept putting it off. So don't put this stuff off. If you miss something and you have the ability to make it up that day, you should do it. If you miss something and you have the ability and the time management flexibility to make it up the next day, you should do it. The only reason you shouldn't do these things, you're injured, you're extremely fatigued, you have a family emergency that requires your full presence. These are things that life takes over. That's fine. But other than that, don't give yourself excuses. Hold yourself accountable and keep moving forward. Thank you and have a great week. I'll see you next time. I'm Coach Marty.